You are listening to the Bright Life Podcast, all about ways to stay inspired, chase your dreams, and find more gratitude in the highs and lows of the journey. I'm your host, Jessica Johnson. I'm a business owner, a part-time digital nomad, a self-growth junkie, a believer in other big-hearted women, and am all about sharing tips, tricks, lessons learned, and encouragement so we can all live our biggest, brightest lives. You ready? Let's do this. Hello, I am so pumped as always to be talking with you, and I think I have a really interesting topic today. Admittedly, this one is something I'm a little bit nervous to talk about. I think it's a topic that can be very triggering to people, or that we all have grown up with stories around, whether good or bad, and a lot of times they're unexamined stories. So for me, this is a topic I didn't even really think much about until I got into entrepreneurship and business. And it's the topic of money, and in particular, women and money. Because I think a lot of times when you get into business, you are almost led. It becomes this spiritual journey of sorts where you're almost led to the conversations that you have to heal or have to look at, and maybe you have adopted a certain set of beliefs and you have to look at them again with fresh eyes and almost redecide and re-choose. There's a lot of growth that goes into running a business and to confronting your limits and past histories or the habits or whatever you've accepted growing up, maybe unconsciously, and then need to relook at. So I've done a lot of that with money in particular, because probably like many people, I grew up kind of with the belief that money was something you didn't really talk about. I would say the view, it wasn't this overwhelmingly positive view. Like it wasn't, terrible, but it was like money is something to be almost like a little bit more suspect of, or you don't really bring it up, or you don't really think much about it. And lately, I have really been challenging those beliefs. And I want to share a little bit more about why, and just a perspective shift that really has made a difference for me and the way I think about it and the way I talk about it. And I think maybe even the potential of the impact and the reach that it can make in our world and on women and our resources and everything. So take what works for you, leave the rest. But here's something that I've been thinking about in case it offers any little nugget of interest for you. All right. And it's something you can apply to your own story. And that's this concept. I was thinking the other day, I think I saw an Instagram post or something, but it was about this notion of how only 2 generations ago, most women were viewed as homemakers, right? Like that's what their perceived place in society was, and there wasn't a lot of other options. Only a generation ago, women were viewed as secretaries, right? And not saying anything bad about either of these things, but more so how interesting it is that that is kind of the position that women were given. I remember Hillary Clinton even saying that when she wanted to go pursue her law degree, she received many comments from men saying, or people in general saying, you're kind of taking that spot from a man. Are you sure why do you need to do that? And that's like 1 generation ago. That's like our mother's generation, right? And so if 2 generations ago, women were viewed as homemakers, 1 generation ago, women were viewed as secretaries. Like I've even heard women by a mother's age saying, they were taught to type, and that was kind of the role that they would get to have, regardless of what other interests or passions they had. And then our generation is arguably one of the first where women have really been able to carve their way into roles as CEO of these billion-dollar companies, right? Like women can be homemakers, they can be secretaries, they can be CEOs, they can be mothers, they can be any of these, or they can be all of these. And I almost started to just realize how recent it is that women have been in positions to make money, to talk about money, to invest their own money. And I started to question some of the stories that I had around money being something that it was distasteful to talk about, or something that you should keep quiet about. And I started to just wonder how much of that was true and how much of that was actually just like this legacy conditioning that I had inherited from a generation before me and they had inherited from a generation before them, let alone like all the generations before that, right? Because truly, money is a resource, right? Just like anything else, money is truly a neutral resource. And I think good people do good things with money. It's just like power. Power used in the hands of good people, whether it's Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or Mother Teresa, power can do amazing things. Power in the hands of the wrong people, I think we all see plenty examples of that, in this day and age. But it's not necessarily the power that's bad, it's who's behind it. And so I think that with money applies a lot as well. It's like money is this neutral thing that can be used for the most amazing generosity. It can lift people out of hunger. It can make people's day. It can pay for that car payment that someone needed. It can pull people out of poverty and give them resources. Right? Or it can be used, and we see a lot of examples of that in the media and otherwise, for bad, right? Like for greed or for just all these purposes that don't necessarily use it to its fullest, maybe highest potential in a good way, right? And so for me, on this conversation around money, I've really started to shift whenever I feel myself almost afraid to talk about it. I start to just question how much of that is really true and how much of that is just something that I've inherited from generations of women not being in boardrooms, not being in rooms where they can talk about money and about how much they want to earn and what they're going to do with it and what they want to do with it. And so much of my business has become about, and like I said, I think this is part of why you're almost led into business down these paths of what your soul almost needs to heal or look at closer. But like, in my business today, I really started to have a lot more conversations hiring people about what they wanted to be paid. I got to think about how I wanted to pay people, how I wanted to bonus them, how I wanted to give raises. I started to mentor people on building their own freelance businesses. And so there were a lot of conversations then about money and sales calls and just knowing your value and also offering a lot of value and just how that exchange works. And so for me, anytime that I post about it, it still feels really new and I still get that kind of like, ooh, like feeling, where I'm like, ooh, do I really want to talk about money? Like a lot of people don't like talking about money. But I've started to really rethink that conversation and how important it is. And how women do have a place to talk about money. And we do have a place to talk because it's our resources, right? Like we should be sharing with each other how we want more resources and what we're going to do with them and how alive it makes us when we have more of them and how we give them to other people. And there's so many things that money can do when women have it. When good women have money, so much good happens. And on that note, there's so many reasons why this is true. Like studies literally show that women in leadership naturally raise up their communities and their teams. They give more back. They empower them into other positions. So more women having more resources, having more money is a good thing. And in order to do that, I think we have to talk about how we want to grow, how we got there, how we got the money, what we're doing with it, right? I think for me, another thing is I've been inspired by other women that I've seen earn a lot of money beyond what I have ever earned or even thought of in some ways, whether it's a group that I've been a part of, whether it's a mastermind, whether it's even other people on social media. When I see a woman talk about money now, I feel less activated, less triggered, right? And I instead start to think about, wow, that's amazing. Is that there for me too? How could I start to want that kind of money and that kind of resource? And what would I do with it? And what am I going to change in the world when I get it? What am I going to change in my life and my family's life? And who do I want to be in relationship to resources and to money like that? I think another very, very important thing is that money is literally your vote. So yes, it's great to vote a few times, every few years, right? But it's way cooler to vote every single day with your dollar because every single purchase that we make is a vote in favor of the life we want to create, whether it's plant-based products, whether it's sustainable packaging, whether it's clothing that's made in ethical factories, whether it's companies that we want to support and the leaders in those companies and how we think business should be done. Our dollar is our vote, and the more dollars that we can make, the more votes we have. Right? And so women in power is an amazing thing. Women with resources and with money is an amazing thing, because that is going to start this upswell of more women getting more positions of power, getting more money, getting more votes, right? If that's what money is a vote. More women getting more votes for the kind of world that they want to create for their children, for their families, for themselves, for their sisters, for their friends. We all know that there's, so many men in power these days, and I love good men, right? And it's not bashing men at all, but it's also saying it's not equal yet. And so the more that we can talk and share with each other about money, the more we can frame it as a good thing instead of something to be ashamed of, or something to be in the hiding in the shadows about, or something to not really talk about with our friends and our daughters. I think the more we can bring it into our conversations, the more we can say, this is how I earned. Let me show you how to do it too. Or this is what I want to do with money. What about you? Or this is the path that worked for me or didn't work for me. Here's what I'm investing in. Here's what I'm not. Here's why. The more we can bring that education into our conversations, I think the more it lifts up not just women, but the entire world, like our communities. I think we all know that women have this amazing gift for caring for one another and for looking out for the person who's left behind, right? And of wanting everyone to have opportunity. I mean, we are the mothers, right, of the world. And so we have that lens of wanting to care for the children of the world as well. And so I just think that for me, I don't know what this offers you, but I just had to share something that's really been on my heart lately. And it's just this changing dynamic around having conversations about money, and it no longer feeling like a taboo thing or a distasteful thing or a bad thing to me, but feeling almost like this right? Like this honor and this privilege and this responsibility is almost the right word, to have more of these conversations, because it means more money, more resource in the hands of good women who are going to do so much more good in the world. So I wanted to offer that for you. I think something that can just be helpful in looking at your own beliefs about money and choosing what works for you and what serves you and what doesn't. And things that I've done is just almost writing this list of what beliefs do I have about it? And almost then looking and seeing, where did those come from? And do I feel like that's the only way? What else could be true? What is the more empowering belief to have around this? What belief would serve me more, my family more, the world more? And really just adopting that lens, I think, is the one step that everyone can take to just kind of unravel their own money beliefs. And you may land at a completely different place than me, and I honor that and respect that, and that's totally fine. But again, it's having these conversations about it, right? Because it's one of the most important resources that we have, and it's one that I feel is this unlimited resource, right? Like, it's not like taking from this pie where if I get a little, this person gets less. It's almost this thing where if we get more money in the hands of these amazing women, everyone gets a little more, because they learn how to create it and to how to perpetuate it and to keep it going in these family lines. And so again, take what you will that works for you, and you look at your own beliefs and see what you want to accept. But I wanted to just start this broader conversation. And if you're wondering why I'm talking about it more these days, that's partly why, is I've just been really examining it and looking at it a lot more closely and curiously. And that's where I've landed up lately. It may evolve over time, it may change, but let's keep the conversation going. And DM me. I'd love to hear where you land on this topic, and if anything strikes a chord for you. So please definitely share with me. And thank you so much for being here. I hope that this just creates a ripple effect in whatever way in your life, hopefully for the better. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I have something you are going to love. As you may know, part of what helps me create my own version of my brightest life is copywriting and content marketing. Building a content business helped me replace and surpass my corporate income, to see the world while working from anywhere, and to choose clients that light me up every single day. If you're at all curious about doing the same, I have broken it down for you in a copywriting starter kit, all the beginning steps you need to build your own profitable freelance business. I will link it in the show notes, so definitely check it out if you're interested. Thank you so much for being here, and I will chat with you next Thursday.